Hello and welcome to the Cryptocurrency News Channel. The SEC has actually approved an ETF that sounds like a Bitcoin ETF, but it's not actually a Bitcoin ETF. They called it a Bitcoin Revolution Company ETF. So the SEC does think that the Bitcoin is a revolution, and it does not look like the SEC is going to stamp it out because they just approved a Bitcoin Revolution ETF. So this is not a Bitcoin ETF. It's not direct or even really indirect exposure to crypto. What the ETF is it's a fund of companies that have exposure to Bitcoin. And some of these companies don't have that much exposure. Some of them do. So it's not really an ETF, but it is a step in the right direction. Remember, the mighty Gary Gensler has actually said that he does support a Bitcoin futures ETF. This is like a step even towards that. Like Bitcoin ETF would be the gold standard. Bitcoin futures ETF would be next. And then you have this Bitcoin Revolution ETF. So basically, it is a portfolio of companies that have exposure to Bitcoin. And they do include Tesla and Twitter because if you guys didn't know, both Tesla and Twitter have exposure to Bitcoin. The fund includes 30 companies, which includes Tesla, PayPal, Twitter, and others. So they did actually approve this, which means they're getting closer and closer to that gold standard of Bitcoin ETF, but they are just not quite there yet, maybe because the banks and the fat cats are not ready. Yes, we are not ready. Anyways, as the crypto world anxiously awaits for Securities and Exchange Commission to approve a Bitcoin ETF, they've actually taken a step in the right direction, and they approved something called the Vault Bitcoin Revolution ETF, which whatever, it's cool, but I'm not that excited about this. So it's managed by Vault Equity, and the fund will provide retail investors with exposure to Bitcoin by creating a portfolio of Bitcoin Revolution companies that hold a significant amount of cryptocurrency on their balance sheets. I think like if you really want to invest in Bitcoin, just purchase like a grayscale fund. So basically, Vault said 25% of the fund's assets would be made up of a stock in MicroStrategy. So that's more direct exposure because MicroStrategy is almost all in on cryptocurrency, I think. And but in the review with Decrypt, Vault founder Ted Park said the percentage could be slightly lower than the fund, which will trade under the ticker symbol BTCHR. So it's cool. It's kind of like a new way of thinking of how to expose people to Bitcoin without actually buying directly Bitcoin. But I'm tired of ways to expose people to Bitcoin without directly buying Bitcoin. I want people to freaking directly buy Bitcoin. But I do think Grayscale is actually a better option if you're actually looking at Bitcoin, if you're actually looking at Bitcoin investments. But this ETF is a tiny, tiny step in the right direction. So he added that the fund will consist of shares in approximately 30 companies, including Tesla, Square, Coinbase, and PayPal. He also said Vault decided to include Twitter. This is from Decrypt. Twitter, which recently made Bitcoin tipping part of its operations. So significant exposure for companies, but these companies, once again, are not 100% into cryptos or Bitcoin, maybe except for MicroStrategy. The thing is the fund will be less volatile than pure crypto plays, which I think is why the SEC actually approved it. But definitely it's not as good for us. So if you want in on these I think like companies will actually be more incentivized to actually purchase crypto if more of these funds come out, because they would actually be part of these funds and investors would have extra avenues into investing in their company via these funds. So it could definitely be good for crypto, but it isn't quite a Bitcoin ETF. But they are making steps in the right direction because an ETF like this wouldn't have been possible a year ago because there's not enough companies exposed into crypto. The SEC has not approved a pure Bitcoin ETF or even a Bitcoin futures ETF in the US, but this does signal that they are willing to kind of consider that road. I think eventually they will approve one, hopefully by the end of this month. If not by the end of this month, by the end of this year. But that is what the Bitcoin Revolution ETF is. Hopefully you understand what it is. Like and subscribe, hit that bell notifications button. Thank you and have a nice day.